Leaders around the world are reacting to news of Sinwar's death, with many saying this could provide a new opportunity to reach a peace deal. CBC's Richard Madden is tracking the story in Washington for us. So, Richard, what more can you tell us about the U.S. response?
Yeah, we recently heard from State Department spokesman Matt Miller fielding questions on what comes next, including how the death of Yahya Sinwar could impact talks for that elusive ceasefire. Now, remember, U.S. officials had long said they were so close to a ceasefire deal, but there was one holdout, and that was Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. The State Department says now that he's been killed, the U.S. and allies plan to, quote, seize that opportunity. Take a listen to what Matt Miller had to say.
The chief obstacle to reaching that ceasefire and bringing it into the war has been Sinwar, who has refused to negotiate at all in recent weeks and has said no time and time again. That obstacle has obviously been removed. Can't predict that that means that whoever replaces Hamas will agree to a ceasefire, but it does remove what has been in recent months the chief obstacle to getting one.
Now, the state is also upping the pressure on whoever the next leader of Hamas will be, saying they should take a hard look at the suffering the terror group has caused and perhaps pursue a different path forward that's not of death, destruction, and harming Palestinians. So if or when ceasefire talks resume, and it already appears U.S. officials have reached out to Qatar, this could very well be a turning point to end the war. But of course, we have to stay tuned on what those next steps are in this very volatile and stunning situation.
Absolutely, Richard. The war in Gaza is also a domestic political issue in the U.S. So what are you hearing today from the White House?
Yeah, it has had a major impact on November's election. President Biden is en route to Germany for basically his farewell tour. We're told he's traveling with Secretary of State Tony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. So we may hear from the president when he lands in a few hours, but he has since issued a statement basically comparing the death of the Hamas leader to 9/11. I'm going to read you a quote very briefly here. He says, "To my Israeli friends, this is no doubt a day of relief and reminiscence, similar to the scenes witnessed throughout the United States after President Obama ordered the raid to kill Osama bin Laden in 2011. He goes on to say Israel has had every right to eliminate the leadership and military structure of Hamas, says Hamas is no longer capable of carrying out another October 7th. Now, the focus of Biden's visit was supposed to be about helping Ukraine, but this latest development will likely overshadow it. In fact, Biden's handling of the Middle East conflict has divided his own party and contributed to his low approval numbers before he exited the race. His vice presidential and Democratic presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, spoke from the campaign trail earlier today. Listen carefully for what she had to say.
This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Now, former President Trump has an event later tonight. I suspect we'll hear from him then. But ultimately, the bigger question here, from a political lens, how will this play out on the campaign trail in its final stretch? That remains to be seen. The war in Gaza may not be a major election issue, but it's certainly motivating some voters in key swing states like Michigan, where a lot of Arab American voters live. The U.S. continues to supply Israel with weapons and intel, but at first glance, this is being viewed here as a possible turning point to end the war.
Richard, thank you. That's the CBC's Richard Madden reporting from Washington. Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has posted a statement on social media about Sinwar's killing. It says, in part, under Sinwar's leadership, Hamas carried out the horrific atrocities of October 7th, sought to destroy Israel, and launched senseless, devastating terror attacks on civilians across the region. Sinwar's death ends a reign of terror. Hamas must lay down its arms, release the hostages, and play no future role in the governance of Gaza. He goes on to say, we repeat our call for an immediate ceasefire. The suffering in Gaza must end. Well, some Palestinians in Gaza are not sure that Sinwar's death will end the war. Here's what one woman had to say.
We received the news with great shock because he is our leader, and may God have mercy on him. Israel claims that he is one of their targets and that after his assassination the war will stop. But the war will not stop. They will come up with new justifications, and in the end they are exterminating civilians while we are the ones living through the massacres every day.
There's also reaction in the West Bank today, and the CBC's Briar Stewart spoke to Palestinians in Ramallah.
I think there was, quite a few people that we tried to talk to that didn't want to express an opinion, that they thought it was too fraught. They were scared of the politics of it, having their, name and image associated with this kind of discussion. Those who did agree to speak with us on camera had a bit of a mixed view. Some thought he was a great leader, did a lot for the Palestinian cause. Others said, even though he, had a kind of a reputation as being notorious, they supported his aims. I will say that every single person I spoke to did not think that this would make a difference when it comes to the war in Gaza. The people here really don't think it will make much of a difference on the ground. In fact, one gentleman said, look, it's been more than a year. You've had more than 40,000 people killed. What difference will one more person make?
That's the CBC's Briar Stewart in Ramallah. Khaled Elgindy is a senior fellow and director of the program on Palestine and Palestinian-Israeli affairs at the Middle East Institute. And he has more on the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and how it could impact the war in the Middle East.
There is an opportunity to lead Netanyahu toward an off-ramp. But that assumes that Netanyahu is willing to go there, and that he's willing and that he has an interest or an incentive to end this war. I think the evidence says otherwise. I think at every opportunity over the past several months, we've seen Netanyahu expand and the war and escalate in the West Bank, certainly in Lebanon, in Gaza now. There is a massive quite horrible assault underway in the north, the northern part of Gaza Strip, where literally nothing, no food or medicine has been entering for more than 2 weeks now. And the north is being subjected to massive airstrikes and bombardment. And there's a real push to remove the remaining population there out of the north. So at every conceivable turn, Netanyahu has decided to escalate, and I doubt very much that he's ready to end the war in Gaza now.